everyone. Welcome. It is so fantastic to see all of you, to be able to talk with you about the fantastic Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. And with me today, just like last time, I have Saibot and Raj. How are you doing, gents?
Doing well, thank you. How's everyone today?
Not bad, not bad. Thanks for asking. How were your ribs?
They were good.
Good.
I wolfed them down.
Yeah, really great to be back.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm really looking forward to this. Actually, this is one of the stories that I loved growing up as a kid. So this is I'm looking forward to this one. So before we get really deep diving into anything, um, is there got anything new going on with you guys? Like, what's Saibot, you said you guys had a pretty good heat wave up there in Scandinavia.
Yeah, we and the Brits got a bit of a wave. I've mentioned it to some of my American friends, and they're just like laughing because it's nothing compared to what you guys get, but we are not built that way.
I'm not built this way either. I like all these people who are like, oh, it's not that bad. I'm like, I don't know what planet you're living on. I am not a fan.
I mean, Cybot, you guys are closer to the Arctic Circle than most of us, so you're not used to, by definition, all of the heat you're getting right now.
Yeah, exactly.
My grandpa said that the hotter the summers are, it usually means the colder the winters.
Well, that's the way it used to be.
Mm-hmm. So, now that we've talked about the weather, and hopefully Cybot won't melt on us. Though, so if I am doing my calculations correctly, because you said it got to 30 degrees Celsius, right?
Yeah, 30, 31.
Okay.
30 is 86.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, so that's about 90. I round, Raj. I try to do the math in my head, so I just round. So it's about, okay, so high 80s, low 90s. It got to, oh God, it was 100 and, so right now it's 103 Fahrenheit, which is roughly 40 degrees Celsius. If I'm doing my math right.
Yeah.
But yesterday it was like 46 degrees Celsius, 47 degrees Celsius, whatever.
Yeah.
It was too hot.
That's like almost 115.
It was 100. Well, it was 116 here yesterday.
Yeah.
115. So it got hot.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, I'd rather be in the oven than the freezer. And I'm like, no. Like, just no. There are only if I am cold, I can add another layer. I can throw another log on the fire. I can put another scarf on. I can wrap another blanket around myself. There's only so many layers I can take off before it becomes illegal. Like, I go to prison. So, good stuff. But, I hear that out on the ocean, it tends to be a bit cooler. And this particular story, a big chunk of it takes place on the ocean.
Yeah.
So, are either of you gents sailors by trade or by hobby or anything?
I'm not. I've always fantasized about, sailing and stuff like that, but never actually done it other than I went on a cruise once.
Oh. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah. It's a Scandinavian trope, I guess, but yes, my family has gone sailing a bit.
I don't know if that's a trope or just an expectation. I mean, you guys are surrounded,
Yeah.
You guys have lots of water right there.
And that's been very enjoyable to do. Has been a couple of years, but reading this book definitely brought it back.
Oh, good. Speaking of this book, let's go ahead and get right into it. Who is your favorite character?
Let's see on my notes.
For me, it wasn't as clear cut as with A Tale of Two Cities with respect to the character, because my knee jerk reaction is to say, well, it's Jim because it's the classic, coming of age story mixed with adventure and all that. But because I'm old, I remember when I was very young or very little in the mid 60s, I remember seeing the Walt Disney movie from the mid 50s.
Oh yeah.
And the TV series that that movie spawned, also from the late 50s. So all that to say, I seem to have more of a soft spot for Long John Silver, because that was the series. It was the adventures of Long John Silver.
Hey, that makes sense. I guess that's really interesting. I've heard a lot of people say that they like Long John Silver, but not that he's their favorite character. I wonder if it's maybe because he is just, if we're going to be perfectly honest, this is Jim's story, but Long John Silver is by far the best known character from this book.
Yeah,
definitely.
Great.
I mean, Jim is a very good character, but compared to many of the characters around him, he is a fairly typical adventure protagonist, kind of. It's not that he's like lacking characteristics, but definitely. And by the way, before I kind of dive into it, because I like to bring my numbers. You mentioned last month that a lot of people know this story, even if they haven't read the book.
Yeah.
Because of all the adaptations. Rosh just touched on some of them, so I looked it up, and there's been 50 plus movie and TV show adaptations of this. There's been more than 24 major theater versions, along with an untold number of minor ones, as well as a large number of comics and video games. There's been various different interpretations where you've had everything from one where Jim is a woman, so like a gender bent version. The Soviet Union made an adaptation. There's been a spaghetti western version. There's been an anime version from Japan.
There's a spaghetti western Treasure Island.
I'm pretty sure there's a Muppet version.
Yes, I've seen them. I have seen the Muppet version many
and of
many
course
times.
there is my favorite adaptation, I think, which is the sci-fi Treasure Planet version.
Yes,
I really like that one. So yeah, I just like to bring those numbers.
It shows you how popular the original story was.
Absolutely,
everyone jumps on it.
Well, it's such a classic adventure framework that's very easy to adapt. It's like main character finds clue to big reward, gathers his crew, including those that might have their own seedy ambitions for it. Adventures along the way, compete for the end goal. It's very easy to use for other things, which is a big compliment to this book, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's fascinating. I thought that maybe there was like a dozen or so adaptations. I had no idea that there were
crazy.
that many.
The gender swap one, I wonder if they made that in 2022 or if they plan to.
I think that one is a bit older. You mentioned the show you saw. When I was younger, I watched one called Legend of Treasure Island, which was a TV show but all the characters were like anthropomorphic animals.
Oh yeah.
It's not very good. Don't watch it.
Oh, okay. I like that. Actually, kind of sounds intriguing. Never mind.
It's very loosely based on the story. I'll say that. It's not very true to the story. And this story brings in. Maybe we're supposed to talk about this later, but I kind of wrote it down here in my notes that this book introduced a lot of what would become classical tropes within the pirate genre. People who hear the name Long John Silver probably thinks of a pirate, even if they don't know which story he's from.
Yep.
What did I write here? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The song Yo Ho and a bottle of rum comes from this.
Yes.
As does like the black spot and even the idea of a treasure being marked with a cross on a map, I'm pretty sure comes from
Yep.
this.
X marks the spot. This is quite frankly the story that kind of like what Tolkien did with fantasy, this story
Yeah.
did for pirates. It's very much the, you know, intimidating like, because there's lots of pirates on the ship.
Hmm.
And so we'll kind of get into the story a little bit. There's about half the crew, about half, are pirates. And the not all of them have a name like Long John Silver. He earned that name.
Yeah.
As did, like, Captain Flint. They just refer to him as Flint because he was hard like that stone, and he would, he could make sparks wherever he went because he was so hard. Anything that came up against him, was basically just
It's such a good name for like a mysterious I guess villainous background character, because it is a real name. I think
yeah,
people can be named Flint, but it makes you think of something that is simultaneously hard and sharp.
yep,
So it's very, very suitable.
very good name. And so, these because we have another pirate who has earned a name, and he is actually, I won't say he's the first character we meet, but he's really the first character that we sort of understand his role in this whole thing, and that's Billy Bones.
Yeah.
Yes.
When he just kind of shows up and that and is like, "Hey Jim, let me know if any seafaring men show up. Here's a couple of pennies," and then basically drinks himself to death, like
Yeah.
stroke-induced rum binge is kind of what happens.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, the maybe not the first character like you said, but he shows up very, very
Very-
early in the book
yes.
to this inn, basically this roadside inn that's owned by Jim's family.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks very haggard. He has the air of a hunted man, let's say.
Yes.
And speaking of favorite character, I have another one, but Billy Bones was actually my initial candidate for favorite character,
Yes.
because I wrote like this. I wrote that he is the source of much of the mystery of the book.
Yep.
He's incredibly well realized. He behaves like in a very realistic way, I think. I think I wrote he behaves like you would expect someone in his situation to do, drowning his like very obvious fear in rum, lashing out angrily at anyone, seemingly quite sure that each day could be his last.
Yes. He's just kind of on borrowed time. And it's really interesting to me because what I have in my notes is, he's giving Jim these few pennies to warn him of
Mhm.
of any seafarers that come to shore. And it's like he's literally buying time. Like he's on borrowed time. Because every day that Jim comes back and doesn't, state that he's seen anything is one more day that he can sort of buy Jim's information. It's one more day that he can sort of buy this peace of mind. And then, of course, it sort of ends. He's actually my favorite character because there are people there's people that come into your life, like in reality, they come into your life and you just know that things are about to change.
Yeah.
Like this is that meeting them or them being a part of your life is going to be the beginning of something that you can't fully understand or realize.
Yeah.
And he, after he passes and they get his sea chest open, and you find out exactly what he was sitting on and what he was hiding, you start to wonder, like, what exactly did he see? Where exactly has he been? How did he get this sea chest? And how did these men that are hunting him know that he has it? And how did they track him here? Like, there's just, like you said, he's such a big source of mystery for the book. And he's the catalyst for this entire adventure.
Indeed. And that can, like, if we back up a little bit, because obviously he's afraid of being found, and eventually he does get found by another character that he's not in the book for a long time, but he makes a very sinister presence. And that is, of course, Pew, the blind man.
Yes.
Who comes looking for him because he wants to have an exchange with Billy. And this is something that Billy is like terrified of. And that's kind of an interesting little thing of, I guess, pirate culture / code. Because you would think that if they knew where Billy was, why wouldn't they just run in and kill him? They seem to have a process to this. Like they have to give him this spot, and that's like what it's like a technicality that Billy wants to avoid because then I guess they can't come after him. Is the thinking? But yeah, they show up, have a violent altercation, and maybe I'm jumbling the events here, but basically he gives. I think he gives him this black spot, which is something that will be referenced in the second Pirates movie, Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Because it's so fascinating to me, because the black spot is there's a lot of, I don't want to say like lore around it, but this is really the first instance that you see it in literature, and what it actually references, if I'm remembering, my English lit class from high school correctly, because pirates did get, I mean, scurvy was terrible, and it, if I am correctly remembering it, like when pirates would get really sick, like they would get like black spots would, like lesions would start to appear on their skin, and it like that, it meant that they were basically dead at that point because their skin was necrosing, like their skin was already dying, and then of course because you have predators in so it's really interesting that you've got this, that the pirates had it correct to a point, but because you've got predators in the ocean that can smell death, right?
Yeah.
You, like, if you had someone who had black spots, they would, like, you'd have more sharks in the water basically because the sharks could smell it.
Yeah, it's almost like if someone is given the black spot, everyone seems to know about it. It's almost like they take a vote or something.
Yes. So it's like, it's almost like it's kind of like a leprosy thing almost, but it's to the point where you're basically already dead, your skin is starting to necrose, and of course everybody can see it, everybody avoids you, and you stink. Like, pirates didn't smell all that great, but when you got the black spot, again, because it's rotting flesh. Yeah. So there's a very distinct difference between heavy body odor and rotting flesh. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
indeed.
So yeah, if I'm like I said, I'm trying to remember stuff from, oh God, I think that was 10th grade English lit is when we learned about that. But I always just found that fascinating because, like, the pirates had it correct. They, like, their shipmate was on death's door, but wasn't necessarily. If they had been able to get to land and, like, seek medical attention, they might have been okay. But usually they're out in the middle of nowhere for months, in the middle of the ocean. So they kind of just chucked you overboard and then watched the sharks eat you.
I guess that's why they called the men of the Royal Navy limeys, because they'd suck on lemons and limes just to avoid scurvy, is my understanding.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating when you see, like, kind of the history, and then you see it brought to, like, literature, and this gives it a much more, like, ominous and almost magical element to it, that you could be given the black spot, like, marked for death that way, as opposed to, simply it being malnourishment or something like that.
It's like receiving a death card or a black rose or something like that.
Yeah, it hints at a much bigger world outside of this inn and bigger machinations going on.
Yes. Which, if Robert Louis Stevenson was still, but I don't want anybody else to do it. not in today's day and age, because they'd ruin it. Oh, it'd be bad. It'd be so bad.
Yeah. No, I did mention that. I was going to say, I did mention that Billy Bones was a candidate for favorite character, but ultimately
Yes.
I did fall back on Long John.
Okay.
Because he definitely is, I think, the most well realized of the characters. He's just a very interesting combination of character traits, I think. I think it was like the fact that he's like an absurd charmer, like flatterer, maybe.
Yes.
The way that he talks himself out of most situations. This kind of like links into one of my favorite scenes, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, I think he's a very good antagonist. He's good at ingratiating himself. He's good at leading his group. He has a lot of presence in the pages.
Yes, he does. Very much so. And it's palpable at how good, how suave he can be.
Yeah.
Which
yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, I think that kind of it's what kind of gave pirates, again, this book sort of gave pirates that idea that they could talk themselves out of things, because the idea that the pirates have a code and they have to stick to it, and they're like, one of the things that you always hear is pirates are very good at contracts. They're very good at getting in and like getting out of anything that they really don't want to be a part of, right?
Yeah.
And that actually sort of comes from this story too, where you've got Long John makes promises. He'll be like, cross my heart, I won't do this. And he doesn't do that. But he does do something else to get him the same result.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really fascinating to sort of see that play out.
Yeah. And definitely that stereotypical way of talking that we associate with pirates is like 50% Long John Silver and 50% the romanticized idea we have of Blackbeard.
Yes, very romanticized.
Those two combined, like those two are basically 50-50 our popular image of the pirates, pretty much.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy a used car from either of them.
No. And again, it's also possible that part of why he's maybe, as far as him being my favorite character, it's possible that I'm letting his much more like positive Treasure Planet image influence me as well. Maybe.
Yeah,
I found it interesting that both of the major pirates in the story had taken a liking to the protagonist of the story.
Yeah.
Both had a soft spot for him.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's because they saw potential in Jim from the get-go, like how he was so, even though his father, by the way, in the book, I know that it's different with different adaptations, but in the book, Jim's father has died.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty recent. And so, he's still really young. Something that this book really does very well is like male role models and choosing them appropriately, and how important like a father figure is in a father and son relationship. Because part of the reason that Jim is so taken with Long John is because he's the cabin boy and Silver is the cook, and so he has to work side by side, and Silver's teaching him stuff like actual skills, and it's just because Silver, it starts out, Silver just needs him to work. You know what I mean? Like, keep the boy busy, keep him tired, keep him out of their business, right? Because kids are nosy. But then it grows into something else, and Jim is really taken with Long John right off the get-go because he really needs that father figure, that male role model that he's craving.
Yeah, there's a really, well, it's not meant to be funny probably, but I find it kind of funny. There's a scene where he discovers that they have a bunch of soon-to-be mutineers on board when he's hiding in the apple barrel, and he overhears Long John talking more or less. I think that's basically the moment he recruits one of the other shipmates, the other young guy named Dick, to the group, and he Jim points out, or he notices that Long John charms Dick to his side the same way he talked to Jim, and that makes Jim really angry. I think he says like if it wasn't like at risk, he would like want. I think he said like wants to like kill John. Maybe not really, but that's like how angry he felt because he felt a bit silly at, I guess, not being the only one that John talked to in that way. I don't know how else to say it, but like he was made to feel special, I think, there, and he learned it was a bit more of an act, maybe.
Yep. And now he's wondering how much of what John taught him and showed him, exactly, was real, and how much of it was an act.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, absolutely.
As a side character, not nearly my favorite, but I did also like some of the moments with the Dr. Livesey.
Dr. Livesey is like, he has good intentions. Like, he really does, but he's kind of an idiot.
Oh yeah.
Like, for being an educated man, especially in this time frame, it was not like, you're just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing?
Isn't it someone who said it? I forget who, but I remember hearing from someone recently that the phrase "an idea so stupid that only an academic or an intellectual could believe it."
Yep.
I think that applies here.
You would have to be educated to make that stupid of a guess.
Yeah. And the guy was the magistrate as well, so he was also the law over it. So, that doesn't say much for him either.
I guess my appreciation of him comes mainly from one scene close to the end where they've kind of made peace between the two sides, and he's like treating the injured pirates. And he's like talking to them like they're basically children needing to take their medicine, even though they're like a band of bloodthirsty killers.
Yeah.
I don't know. That scene alone, I guess, got him some plus points with me.
Agreed, because he took he put his personal, like, these men tried to kidnap him, kill him, and steal from him, and he still assisted them when he was needed in that role of doctor. So it shows that he definitely is able to be not even mature, but just be a human, and put his Hippocratic oath above his own personal opinions, or like, the because like a normal human being, if someone tried to kill you, kidnap you, rob from you, maroon you, it would be completely understandable that you would want to inflict pain on them or get some type of revenge. But he has more. You're right. It's when he kind of shows he really does. He's made of more than just the aloof air that he puts on all the time. He actually has some metal.
And in the end, he's a doctor, and he put on his doctor's hat and he went into bedside manner mode.
Yep. Absolutely. So,
speaking of other things, of how saturated the stuff of this book has kind of become in our popular culture, I remember a while back thinking of the name Hispaniola, and I was wondering where I'd heard it before, and I realized that I thought that the Hispaniola was one of those like ships that Columbus had with him when he found America, and I'm like, no, that's from this story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Columbus was the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria.
Yeah, so that's.
So yeah, I didn't realize that you. Oh man,
and if I'm not mistaken, Hispaniola, the ship, was named after the island of Hispaniola, which is half Haiti, half Dominican Republic.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probs. Yeah, see, like, that just goes to show how much of a cultural effect this book has, and how steeped in our culture, like you said, Cybot, it is.
Yeah, it also shows how dumb I am, but that's a different question.
That doesn't shit. No. I challenge you to find a teenage TikTok American who could tell you the 3 ships of Columbus. I dare you. Like, go see if you can find them. There's my open challenge. Go find any American teen who does TikTok.
I was gonna say I don't take unwinnable bets.
Odds are too long on that one.
Right.
So you said. So we've established, I think, favorite characters. It's Long John for me. Rosh, you said Jim?
Well, I'm half Jim, half Long John Silver. Actually, maybe it's 40-60 in favor of Long John Silver.
Okay.
I mean, Jim's a protagonist. Like, this is Jim's story, so
Yes.
you gotta be pulling for Jim. But that said, the roguish element, has its charm in this one.
For sure. Like I said, I do love Billy Bones, but I actually, and it was so funny because when I was rereading this story, I completely forgot that the captain's name is Captain Smollett. I giggled. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Can he be related?
Oh, possibly. But Captain Smollett, Captain Smollett, something about the way that the captain is written, I just really, because it's not that it's no nonsense. It's very much just from the very onset. Smollett tells Trelawney, is that how you say it? Trelawney?
Trelawney, yeah.
Trelawney. Like, I don't like this. The crew is at best, a bunch of very rough individuals, and at worst, we're looking at possible, like, Smollett from the onset suspects mutiny based off of the crew. Like, very capable captain, knows what's needed, gets them where they need to go. Like, I mean, there's a few times where if it wasn't for Smollett, like, they'd all be dead.
Yeah, he knows how a functioning ship plus crew looks like.
Yes.
And he probably knows the signs that something is not right. And yeah, he's an extremely dependable person to have around.
Yes.
Reliable.
And I think, again, because a big theme in this story is fatherhood, and surrogate father, and that sort of father-son relationship and dynamic. And I think, Smollett is the father that Jim should have looked up to. You know what I mean? The father figure that Jim should have looked up to. But he was sort of led astray by these sweet words and these, the instruction and the detail and the facade of care from Silver. Because a lot of it was, again, it started out as a facade. Silver eventually did start to care about Jim. But, it all started out, he was just using Jim.
Yeah, I mean, comparing the two of them, it's very easy to see why a young person would gravitate more towards Silver, because, I mean, he literally flatters him at every turn. Yeah. Smollett doesn't really do that. He is the more dependable person, like I said. He probably gives better life lessons overall. Yeah. But he's, by virtue of being a bit more reserved, he's not as charismatic as John is.
He's like a parent.
Yeah,
exactly.
You really don't think your parents are cool until, you're a little bit older, and then they knew their stuff after all,
Yeah.
And I think, especially when you get to the end of this story, when they're up in the stockade, and they're, we're jumping quite a bit forward, but when the captain's able to sort of negotiate and isn't taken in by Silver's flattery, I think that's when Jim starts to realize, like, again, when Silver is flattering Dick is when when Jim feels hurt, right? He feels betrayed because he thought that it was a special connection or relationship that he had with Silver. And now he's questioning all of it. And then you see Smollett, who has or Smollett, however you say it, because now I have no idea. But you've got Smollett, who at the end gets them, he gets them home. They get the treasure. He's managed to broker a deal, and he isn't taken in by Silver's flattery. That Jim really starts to realize how much respect he actually has for the captain, and that the captain doesn't hate him like he thought, because he was under the impression that the captain was punishing him because he didn't like him.
Exactly. By the way, flattering Dick is not a phrase I thought I would hear today.
Right?
Yeah, seriously.
By the way, something I just realized, but maybe I should have earlier. Lady G, how do you feel to not have your sex represented in this book? Are you offended?
No, not at all. I actually didn't. I mean, Jim's mom is in it for a minute.
I was gonna realize that there's not a whole lot of, there's literally like one female character. I didn't think about it too much because again, it's not. I guess it fails the Bechdel test, but hey.
I don't care. It's a great story.
Nope, nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Jim's mom definitely, because Jim, even though he's young, he now, especially because his father's died, he feels really extra protective of his mother and wants to make sure that they don't lose their inn and they don't lose that she's not run out or bought out. Because he has these fears. Like his mother has these fears of someone coming and simply taking it from her because she is a woman. And so, Jim wants to be able to protect his mom. And if he can find treasure, well, then they never have to worry again, right? The way that Jim sees it is very, very much through the eyes of a child. Because he doesn't think he's going to be able to fail, which is fantastic. I think that's why it makes him truly a great protagonist for this story. Because at no point does he think he's not going to get the treasure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he doesn't.
Go ahead.
He doesn't doubt himself at every turn, which is a character trait. Having a moment of crisis or failing confidence can be very character building for a character, but it gets really annoying when they doubt themselves all the time.
Yeah. And like we said, really the only time that Jim sort of doubts is when he feels that betrayal by Silver. Yeah. And it's not even about himself. It's not about whether or not he's going to be able to find the treasure. It's not whether or not he's going to be able to help his mother. It's whether or not the relationship that he built with Silver means anything. Right? Exactly. So he never actually doubts himself. It's so refreshing because he very simply looks at it and goes, okay, we need to get a ship. We need to sail to the island. We need to get the treasure and we need to bring it home. It's literally that simple for him. I mean, I'm obviously paraphrasing his thoughts or whatever, but it's how he's looking at it. At no point does he think he's not going to be able to do this.
Well, because he's still a kid, but he's had to grow up very quickly, in recent events, his dad dying, Billy Bones dying, them basically abandoning their inn, which was their sole source of, living income. And he's jumping into the unknown, but I don't know if it was so much a sense of adventure as much as, well, he's never really felt perhaps anything like betrayal or the real world and how cruel it can be until, that guy walked into their inn.
Yeah. And,
definitely.
he still has that child invincibility mentality. Like at no point, that's the thing about being a kid for the most part. And this is why childhood, and everybody's like, oh, we don't need to protect them. Like kids are resilient. Like, no, the reason kids are resilient is because you guard them from the harshest of it. And most children in this world, death is not something that they consider happening to them because they're so young and they're so impervious to just the general I don't want to say like blight of the world because that seems a bit much, but just in general, kids when they look at something, they're like, okay, I'm going to do it, and then they just go do it. Like, and if they fail, you encourage them to try again. You're like, okay, it didn't work that way. Maybe there's another way you can do it. You know what I mean? So at no point should you ever like.
Yeah, the sense of self-doubt comes
You
later.
need to learn the harsh reality of it, and here 5-year-old, this is what's going to happen in probably 75 to 80 years. You're going to be bedridden and hate life, and no one's going to come see you, and you're going to be lonely, and you're going to die miserable and alone. Like, you don't tell a 5-year-old that.
No. And it definitely, you guys pointed out that he does have that sense of like adventurous invincibility, but also a lack of experience, because there is he's not afraid, or it's not conscious on his part, but he does experience those emotions of shock when the real world does come knocking, because I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I remember that he cries when Billy Bone dies.
Yep.
And I think it literally says, it's not that he necessarily disliked him, but didn't really like him either. It was more like, I think he says something like, I've never seen someone die before, and this was just like the immediate reaction. So he is very new to all of this, obviously. So
yeah. First he lost his dad, and I won't say it's the same page, but close enough. Within a few pages, he lost Billy Bones as well.
Yeah, and his dad's death is actually it's actually brushed over very quickly.
Yes.
It just says like, oh yeah, and he died that day. But then he immediately have to deal with Billy Bones' nonsense right after.
Yeah. And the thing too, Billy Bones was a distraction from his dad's death. So I think when Billy died in front of him, it really there wasn't any more distraction. Yeah. He had to deal with both deaths simultaneously.
Yeah. Had to face them. Yeah.
Yeah, had to realize be like, this is what happened to my dad. Like, maybe not, not that his dad stroked out on rum, but just that this is like Billy's life has ended. It's like it's not going to go forward anymore, and this is exactly what happened to just like his dad's life ended, and it's not going to go forward anymore.
Yeah. And also, before we talk about favorite scenes and such, I will also give his mom her fair due, because she has one scene which I found to be simultaneously funny, charming, and admirable at the same time, and that's actually when they are fleeing the inn from Pew and the pirates, and she's digging through Billy's belongings and looking for what little money he has to basically get back all the rum money.
Yep.
And she's extremely meticulous. Not one penny too little, and not one too many.
Not one too many. Yes.
That's very. She's very set about that, because
it's very admirable, and also it's like, you realize how much money is there?
Yeah, I mean, almost anyone else would have just taken it all, but she's a very honorable person, so she wanted to be sure.
And also, for me, after that scene, it always made me wonder. It makes me wonder if, because when Pew and the pirates, whatever, obviously they found Billy.
Mm-hmm.
When he still has all that money on him, they probably think that Jim and his mother took nothing. You know what I mean? It always made me giggle. Do they know that she basically looted his corpse? But she did, again, like you said, it was literally just to get the money owed her.
Yeah. So a very a very decent, honorable thing for her to do, but also kind of made a bit ridiculous by the fact that you have literal pirates beating down your door while you're sitting there counting.
Yes. That is a fantastic scene, and I think that's probably why she's also a very real character.
Yeah.
Because people deal with shock and despair and disappointment in different ways, and she would some people put it in a box, and she clearly puts it in a box and is like, well, he has passed, I'm going to get the money owed me, and then we're going to go. That's how she's dealing with this right now, because she's losing her inn, and she's she's lost her husband and now she's running for her life. And so she's dealing with that this way. This is how she's coping.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd have to say I that is a good one. That's a really good one. But since we're here and we're talking about favorite scenes, about which one is your favorite scene?
My favorite scenes are kind of two scenes that are conjoined, but it's the reason like I said, why I think Long John became my favorite character, and it's partially the scene where he's negotiating with Jim, which then leads into him kind of like outwitting / out talking the Buccaneer Council when they're thinking about killing Jim and possibly also Long John by association, and he just like, they say, oh, what's your grievances with me then, eh? And one of them, George, I think, comes up and like, oh, well, you did these 4 things and therefore you should not be captain. He's like, okay, let's go through. He like talks through why they shouldn't kill him basically, and he goes through each point in turn, and he's like, actually convinces them that it's not his fault and everything is all right and we're still on course. You guys are being silly for doubting me, basically.
Yeah.
And it's very like, I think it's a very cool demonstration of how, first of all, how quick-witted it is, that he doesn't panic.
Yeah.
And basically keeps his calm, keeps his cool, and how he can play, basically play other people. So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite scenes.
He would be a modern day psychic, like the ones who read people,
Yeah,
and
psychic profiler.
Yeah, something like that. Well, since he's a pirate, he would probably play the role of psychic as opposed to profiler. He'd swindle people for their family jewels.
He definitely knows how enough to read people in order to then take advantage of whatever he learns.
Yes. He is very good at turning situations to his advantage.
I don't know how much of a compliment it is, I guess, but I guess he would be a pretty good debater / politician.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah.
Pirates were the original politicians. Or were politicians the original pirates?
Or hostage negotiator, which in fact that's sort of what he was, right?
Yeah.
Where Jim was concerned.
And I mean, they do have their own little tightrope that they have to walk among each other, as we see here. Like they have to really, show that they can be there and not be the pirates. And this is something you see a lot with like criminal groups. It's almost like a hyena pack where, you have to find your place in the totem pole and you better not be at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my favorite. Oh, I'm going to have to duck out for a second, as I said. So I'll be right back.
You're good. So, Raj, what about you?
Well, I tend to agree with Cybot on that scene. And just in general, I kind of like the pitched back and forth battles for supremacy, like Jim escapes, Jim gets captured, Jim escapes, Jim gets captured. It's very, like on the edge of your seat type stuff, even though you're reading it, you're pulled into it. So I kind of like that as a whole, but all of the where Long John Silver, because he's my favorite, I gotta pull for the man. But where he struts his stuff, I think is where I find the strength in the story.
Yeah. Huh.
How about you?
Well, so we've not really talked about Ben all that much.
No.
But Ben Gunn is actually a pretty important character. He is he's a Maroonie, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly the word they used. But he's been trapped on this island for quite some time.
He's a little scat.
Yeah. He's kind of crazy. It's okay though. But Ben actually plays a really important role in this story. So of course he's been trapped here for ages. And what's interesting is the pirates find Flint's treasure cache, but like the treasure's gone. So someone's already been here. Someone's already taken it. And this is actually my favorite scene because you see that even when, I guess, when they could have taken off, when they could have abandoned Jim and left, they didn't, because what ends up happening, massive spoilers, go read the book, but the treasure cache is empty, and so two or three, I can't remember, I think it's two, they charge Silver and Jim because they assume that somehow Silver is in on this, like that Silver somehow got here first and has basically pulled one over on them, right? And so they're charging at Jim and Silver, and the good captain saves the day and takes out the two bad pirates before they can harm Jim. And it always made me wonder, because the doctor warns Silver to look out for trouble, because at this point, so basically what's happened is the captain has made a barter with the pirates, and they gave up the stockade and the map, right? So that's how the pirates get the map. And the doc is telling Silver, he's like, look out for trouble tomorrow when you get to the treasure site. And, like, Silver's kind of just like, whatever, like, I've got this under control. But then you've got Ben, the doc, or Livesey, is it the servants? I can't remember. Anyway, basically what happens is you've got Jim's team hiding in the bushes, and they kill the pirates. My notes are not helping me right now. I didn't write this part down well enough. And it's kind of, even Long John Silver is impressed. And I think probably the reason this is my favorite scene is because it clearly takes a lot to impress that man, because he's so used to being able to see every angle, and he didn't see this angle. He didn't see the treasure being gone. He didn't see the pirates, like, coming at him, because he thought he had, like I said, talked them down, had them under control. They wouldn't be trying anything.
The one thing he forgot or neglected to remember is that pirate's gonna pirate.
Yeah.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, like he knows that, the moment the treasure is not there, that's when
Yep.
His life and Jim's life is basically almost forfeit.
Yep.
And yeah, it's like you said, I think it's really cool to see him be impressed by somebody. And it's easy to see why he's rarely impressed, because if he's grown used to being able to play people around him more or less like fiddles, when he's actually taken by surprise by somebody, that probably is a source of being impressed for
Absolutely.
him.
Yeah. Speaking of Gunn, Ben Gunn, I found it really funny when you get to see the pirates' more superstitious side with the whole fake voice, or the echoing voice, and they're convinced that it's Flint's ghost trying to keep them away from the treasure, and they're like terrified.
Yep.
But then, like, one of them points out, well, the voice sounds, it doesn't really sound like the old captain, and they're like, it sounds a bit more like that old kook Ben Gunn, doesn't it? And their fear immediately vanishes, because according to them, none of them are afraid of Ben Gunn, including his ghost. I just found that a bit funny.
Yeah, Ben gets some crap, but he's the whole reason that the pirates don't get the treasure.
Yeah, exactly.
I always found it ironic. I'm like, what are the odds that you maroon him on the very island where he's able to find what you're looking for? But that's just me.
I can imagine him having a good cackle about being right all along when he actually found the treasure.
Right. Oh man. So we've kind of got, like I said, this so folks, this one's going to be a little bit shorter today. I am not feeling superb. I'm sure you can kind of maybe hear it in my voice a little bit, but before we head out, I'm just curious. We've done scene, we've done character. Was there a particular arc that stood out to you at all? Either of you?
Uh, for me, just Jim's arc of being the kid to being like, I won't say he's the hero, but he grew up
Okay.
and he had his adventure, and then in the end, it's like, yeah, I ain't doing this no more.
Right? He figures out what really matters.
Yeah.
Hmm. I'm usually so bad at like identifying a good arc throughout the story, but I guess for me it would be, it probably would be Long John's impression of Jim changing throughout the book, probably.
Okay. That's a good one. Yeah, that is a good one. So my favorite arc is actually, you kind of hit on it, Cybot. It's actually Ben Gunn's, because he, like, you could tell this man came from some kind of background that wasn't necessarily noble, but also wasn't completely dastardly. And just the fact that he's able to go from like the crazy kook to fulfilling Jim's dreams, and you know, kind of coming in and rescuing everybody there at the end, and helping take all the pirates by surprise. Like he gets to play a bit of the hero, and that was one of my favorite. That's my favorite arc. I do enjoy getting to see, because with Ben, we go through his arc really quickly, but
Yeah.
it's very well thought out, and it's kind of an anchor for the story itself, which is awesome.
Yeah, I listened to the audiobook and I think they mentioned him beforehand, but I think he shows it's like 7 hours long. I think he shows up within the last hour or so of the book.
Yeah, he's
Do you remember the mention he gets in the kind of epilogue of the story? They say that because he got a bit of the treasure, as I remember, like
Yeah.
several thousand pounds or whatever they say, and they point out that he spent it all almost immediately, and then had to like get a job at like a lodge house or something. But
Which,
yeah,
back in the day, what are you spending all that money on? But you know,
Well,
probably the same thing that
being a
they
pirate
needed.
or a former pirate, I can only imagine.
I know, right?
And you know, as fun as that is, because you know, you get the idea that he doesn't know how to handle money, which makes sense now that he's back among civilization. You know, obviously he has a lot of catching up to do. But it also brings back something I think Long John said while reminiscing about how when he had all this money from pirating, what did he say? Like he lived every day like it was his last or something. Like he
Yeah.
spent money on everything. I imagine that Ben probably did some of that.
Oh, for sure. Especially, I mean, he was on that island for years.
I mean, yeah.
Like, he is absolutely gonna indulge. Take that as you will.
He definitely needs a new set of underwear. I can say that.
Well, that for sure, but also, I mean, he's probably, I mean, with the job he's taken, he's encountering people, I would imagine, and it's the one thing that he, among other things, that he missed while he was marooned is like other people, as bad as they are.
As bad as that, we are social creatures. That is for sure.
I can only imagine that he never got back on a ship again.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't. Oh man.
Can you imagine a sequel where he ends up on another island and the story is just about that?
No. I feel like in the first Pirates that they sort of used Ben's story for Jack, where because he gets marooned on the island, but then he miraculously escapes.
Well, it's they're both Disney adaptations of Treasure Island. Well, both Disney adaptations. One of its own theme park ride,
yeah.
but the other one of the book.
Yeah. So, it's pretty outstanding. But this is relatively a comparatively speaking to other classics like Moby Dick, and even Tale of Two Cities, this is a relatively short read.
Yeah.
So definitely something you could accomplish depending, like, in a day or two. If you like just sat down and just read this book, you could knock it out in an afternoon.
And for anyone who hasn't read it yet, it doesn't have what I think most of us pointed out as a quote unquote problem with Two Cities, which is that the text can be a bit hard to digest sometimes.
Yeah.
This one is not dense at all. It flows very easily. It's very easy to grasp.
Very, very easy, which is definitely helpful for sure. So we're gonna kind of wrap it up with this book right there. What would you give this story out of 10, Raj?
I'd give this like an 8.5 or a 9. I forget what I gave Tale of Two Cities, but I think it's up there.
Okay. So you're thinking 7, 8?
No, I'm thinking like an 8.5, let's say.
Very cool. Okay. And why? What is the defining factor that sort of gives you that 8.5?
It might be the nostalgia factor for me, just from
Ah.
the stories I watched, the movies and then the TV show when I was a kid. I mean, it was already in reruns in the mid '60s because it came out in the mid '50s.
Wow.
But no, I was all over it when I was a kid. I thought it was great.
Well, that's awesome. What about you, Cybot?
Well, I remember being a bit harsh on the first book on the club, and mostly because that it wasn't my type of literature for the most part. This one, I'm actually going to give it a 9, maybe even a 9.5.
Ooh, okay.
And the reason for that is because this is the type of classic story that really defines its genre, which is just traditional adventure. This is the genre that gave birth to things like The Mummy and things of that nature. Just travel, find the exotic places, find the treasure, with a band of intrepid fellow adventurers along the way.
Get betrayed and then rise above it. Yeah.
So I have to appreciate it for that reason alone.
Fantastic. Oh man, I'm so glad. I'm so glad, because like I said earlier, I think a lot of people know this story because it's so embedded in the culture. They know the big aspects of it, but I think a lot of people haven't really read it. So I'm really excited that you guys rated it so high.
Also, if I may, just like I said with the previous book, reading it when you're young or even a kid versus reading it when you're an adult can bring two different understandings of the same work. Yes. Because you see it with an adult's eyes as opposed to a kid's eyes. So you can understand a little bit what, Jim's arc was, as opposed to when you're a kid. Oh, God, I could be that kid,
Yeah.
Definitely. Like a kid might view this story, naturally a bit more from Jim's perspective.
Yeah.
But when we read it, we might look at the situation the way Long John does or Captain Smollett does, because that's a bit more in keeping with us, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, gosh, I'm so happy to hear that. I am gonna have to give this book. I rated it very high as well for a lot of similar reasons. I gave this book an 8 out of 10.
Ooh.
And I think it's, the story is just so it's so timeless, and even the tropes that we've seen, it really defined modern pirate culture as we know it. It made pirate culture what it is today. Because I sincerely doubt without this story we would even have Curse of the Black Pearl with the Pirates of the Caribbean. I think without this story, and even, because even Robinson Crusoe didn't do what Treasure Island did for pirates. And really that was he didn't write Silver to try and make him sympathetic, because even through the end, like, Silver was a pirate through the end of the story. And so Silver is never really the sympathetic villain. He is actually, when you look at it and kind of take a step back, he's kind of the worm that gets out of the situations. Like, he would be, in any other story, instead of the antagonist, he would be like the henchman, because he's the one who can see which way the wind is blowing, and he'll change his sails to adjust and follow that breeze.
It's like Smee.
Yeah, kind of. But like it's so fascinating to watch, because in this context, because he is a pirate and because this is how they live, those types of things, instead of making him, a secondary or a tertiary pirate, they make him an exceptional pirate.
Yeah.
Because that's what you need to survive in this world.
Yeah, and that's even a bit charming, though, because, I mean, yeah, obviously he's a criminal in that sense, but he's also like, you get the feeling that Long John could never be anything but a pirate.
Yes.
And he's gonna die a pirate. He's not gonna give up those boots, as it were.
Yeah, and I think because of that, and just because the story is really endearing and it's timeless, and it's you've got such a heavy. I did not realize how much I missed, like, a father-son trope, like a father figure trope. I really did miss that a lot.
Yeah.
And to read something that is just so, I guess, for lack of a better word, there's just so much masculine energy that it really helps push the story forward in a way that I don't think a female perspective, or like a female being aboard, would have been able to let the story go the same way. Because if there had been like an adult female on board, she likely would have tried to take on a mothering role to Jim. You know what I mean? And it would have turned out very different.
Well, they were also likely seen as bad luck or worse. On the
yeah.
ship anyway.
Yes, this is true. But I just mean it. Oh my.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that's here.
So yeah, I think just because of how, I mean, this story basically created this genre and helped build it into what it is today, and has made, do you really think you'd go to Ren fairs and see people in pirate attire if it wasn't for the story? I mean, truly. Like, there's so much of fantasy and pop culture that we owe to Treasure Island, and I just don't think it gets enough, like, appreciation or love, really. So yeah, it's a solid 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's again kind of like why I guess the Treasure Planet one is one of my favorite adaptations, precisely because of the relationship between Jim and John in that one. They have some really good father-son-esque moments, and that's when I think it was Disney who made that one.
Yep, that was Disney.
Back when they knew how to tell a good father-son relationship story.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Yeah. By the way, I was curious. I don't know how into, like, I guess, bookkeeping you are, Lady G, but it could always be fun to, I guess, keep track of the scores of the books we read, just kind of get some kind of bell curve or something.
Absolutely, we can definitely do that. I'll collect the data from last one and this one, and we'll see what we.
Yeah, like once we've done this for a while, and see just how the curve.
What our average is, what our mean is.
Yeah,
we can definitely do that. And speaking of books, so this one is interestingly kind of a combination of the two books that we've previously read, which was not done intentionally. I will tell you that much. So next month, before I tell you which book we're going to be reading, next month's going to be a little bit different. If you are a Grave Master, you are able to bring a suggestion of one book to the table, and we can and basically defend your point as to why you've read it. Now, it has to be a book that you yourself have read. And again, right now we're still trying to stay away from serialized stories. So like if it's kind of like Redwall, which you can kind of read, like you can kind of pick one up anywhere from that series and sort of read it, and it's almost like a standalone story of its own, kind of. If you have a series that isn't linear, we could probably pick one out and read it. But right now we're trying to stay away from like trilogies or duos, just as of right now, because I know that can be sort of daunting for a lot of people. I mean, if I had my way, the first 14 of these would have been the Wheel of Time books, but that's a huge undertaking, and those are big books. So, but
So
we'll
the standalone thing is preferable.
yes, just for now until we sort of get everybody kind of, because even Cybot said he's getting back into the swing of reading. So I figure we give this a few more. We give the book club a little bit more before we dive into a series.
Cool.
But you guys are welcome to bring your selection. I will have a choice of 3 books that you can each vote for, and we'll do a poll at the end of the book stream. And if it's just the 3 of us, then I guess the 3 of us get to decide. But we'll do a poll at the end, and whatever story gets the most votes is the one that we will read for the upcoming book club. But that'll be the month after next,
Cool.
Which is August. And our next book club will be August 20th.
And what is it? Did we already discuss this while I was cleaning my dishes? Or?
Nope. So the next book club will be August 20th, and the book that we're going to read is The Three Musketeers.
Excellent.
So this story is one of my favorites. I 100% love this story, and it's always funny to me because this is also a book that has had multiple adaptations. But there's so many fantastic tropes and character arcs, and there is a line that comes from this story that so many people know, but I don't think they know comes from this story. And I'm not going to ruin it.
Oh, I was
because. Oh, what were you going to say it?
I was going to say it. Yeah. You mean the one where? Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's really funny to me, I can always tell someone who has actually read the book as opposed to maybe watched one of the adaptations, because they don't really explain in the adaptations. I mean, there's a few that do justice to it, but like one of the things that always gets asked is, well, if it's the Three Musketeers, how come there's 4 of them? I guess you're gonna have to read the book, aren't you?
I was literally about to ask that question.
You're gonna have to read the book, Cybot.
This is going to be the 3rd classic in a row that I have not read before, but which I will now have a reason to read.
I'm so excited. I hope you like it. It is one of my favorite books. And like I said, it's almost like kind of a weird mix of A Tale of Two Cities and Treasure Island, which is a bit funny, but also it was completely unintentional. But yeah, we're just sort of sticking with some greats that I feel a lot of people have not really read. And like, again, this is another book where I think a lot of people, they know that. Well, okay, so this isn't the line that I was talking to. Raj, were you going to say All for One?
I was going to say that, but I figured that's kind of obvious. So
yeah, so it's not that line. There's a different line that comes from this book. When you read it, hopefully you'll realize that it was the line I was talking about. I guess we'll find out next book club.
yeah.
But yeah, this particular story, again, is something that has really permeated our culture. It's, you get a group of friends, if there's 3 of them, they'll be like, we'll be like the 3 Musketeers. And I'm like, I don't think you want to make that comparison. Like, I don't think you understand what kind of comparison you're making. But it's so good. And you know, we've got, it's another story that has really just influenced so many stories to come after it, and has really kind of defined a lot of, I guess, not necessarily royalty per se, like royalty, like royal fantasy stuff, but it's very much this sort of duality between commoners and royalty, and because middle class didn't exist, but there was sort of this line between commoners and the aristocracy, and that was like literally not necessarily the military itself, but those were like guards. You know, they weren't necessarily commoners, but they were also not part of the aristocracy.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
That the military in this time period was a place where those two intermingled.
Yes.
Well, not intermingled, but they encountered one another, because there was a very hard line between what we nowadays would call enlisted soldiers, or like conscripted, because those were always commoners.
Yep.
Whereas the officers were always aristocrats. So
yeah, but these guys were the best of the best, you know.
Oh yeah. It's a great story. I'm really looking forward to talking about it next month, and I really hope everybody enjoys reading it. Because it is so good. It really is. So Alexandre Dumas wrote it, and this one is not as dense as A Tale of Two Cities, but it's also not as light as Treasure Island. It's definitely sort of that middle ground.
Okay.
Good.
So, all right. Well, gents, any parting words that you'd like to say?
Oh, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. I think it's cool, and I as well, as Cybot, am trying to get back into reading, because I do love it. It's just life, but you have to make time for the things you love, right? So
absolutely. Well, I am excited. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it. So far, I think we've had 2 pretty solid home runs. So
I'm definitely enjoying it. This is rapidly becoming one of my favorite times of the month. So,
yay!
very good.
All right. Well, then I will see everybody on August 20th, and we will talk about the 3 Musketeers. So, Cybot, Raj, thank you so much for being on with me. It means the world. I love talking about this stuff. And hopefully next month we'll be able to have another fantastic discussion.
Excellent. Looking
All
forward
right.
to it.
Talk to you later.
Later.
Bye, everyone. Much love. God bless. Godspeed.